I think that we as Christians have to accept the fact that there is no best of both worlds, right? Like either you're going to go all out and serve God or you're just going to serve Satan. Like it is what it is. There is no in between. Hey girl, hey, I'm Larissa J. Welcome and welcome back. As Halloween approaches, I know that there's a lot of Christians who want to know, what does the Bible say about Halloween and should Christians celebrate Halloween? So today I'm giving you those answers. Let's do this. All right, so let's start with what the Bible has to say and then stick around until the end of this video because I'm also going to give you a little bit of the origin of Halloween. Everything is going to be timestamped below in the description box. The Bible does not specifically mention the word Halloween, but it does guide us in helping us decide whether or not we need to partake in this holiday. As we've seen, Halloween decorations usually include witches, cauldrons, spiders, tombstones, skulls, and all kinds of crazy stuff like that. These things are not of God. In fact, they're in opposition to the light and the life and the peace of God because they represent evil and darkness and death. So we're going to look at a few scriptures that can address this topic. Another thing to consider is our witness. Listen, if we are strolling around in the neighborhood with costumes along with everyone else, how can we glorify God? So let's look at a few scriptures that are going to help us address this topic. So the first Bible verse that we're going to start with is 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 22. It's very short and sweet, and it says, abstain from all appearances of evil. So this means that we're going to stay away from the appearance, the very look of anything evil. There are some people who like to say, well, we don't do the evil costumes. Kids dressed up as cute good witches or Superman or Little Pumpkin because he's only one. However, we have the responsibility to follow the biblical admonition to protect and train our children in the Lord with scriptural principle. And truth be told, there is no such thing as a good witch. So you can just throw that out the window. In fact, the concept of wearing costumes in itself originates from the pagan holiday Samhain, which is still celebrated by people around the world, particularly Wiccan. We as Christians must accept the fact that instead of trying to sugarcoat things and twist things up to fit what we want to do, that the scripture is a scripture and God meant what he said. So let's look at the second Bible verse, which is Isaiah chapter 5, verse 20. What sorrow for those who say that evil is good and good is evil, that dark is light and light is dark, that bitter is sweet and sweet is bitter. This is very clear cut. It's saying that we are not to say that evil is good, that we are not to say that good is evil. I think that this is very applicable when we're talking about a topic like this with Halloween, where it is clearly a dark holiday. It says here, we shouldn't be saying that evil is good. We shouldn't be saying that dark is light. And that's something that we just need to be honest about the situation and call it what it is. Halloween is not a light or good holiday. Another thing that we need to consider is our witness. We're strolling around the neighborhood with our kids wearing costumes. Like, is that really glorifying God? I think that is the ultimate question. If someone were to take a step back and just survey the area and they see us strolling around with costumes right along with everyone else, are they going to be able to say, oh, those are Christians? Probably not, because we would be blending in right along with everyone else, doing what everyone else is doing. And we as Christians are called to stand out, to be different, and not conform to the world, as it says in Romans 12:2. We have to ask ourselves, is God being put on display when we decorate our homes with black cats and witch brooms and tombstones and skulls? If someone drives by your yard and sees flying ghost silhouettes everywhere, are they going to think about Jesus? I think not. So as Christians, we need to be intentional about the way that we live and the things that we partake in, which leads us to the next scripture that we're going to look at today, and that is Ephesians 5, verses 15 and 16. And it says, so be careful how you live. Don't live like fools, but like those who are wise. Make the most of every opportunity in these evil days. There is specific instruction here for us to make sure that we are intentional, that we are careful with how we live, we are careful with the decisions that we're making. We want to make the most of every opportunity because clearly these days are evil. I think that we as Christians have to accept the fact that there is no best of both worlds, right? Like either you're going to go all out and serve God or you're just going to serve Satan. Like, it is what it is. There is no in between, which leads to the next scripture, which is 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 21. And that says that you cannot drink from the cup of the Lord and from the cup of demons too. You cannot eat at the Lord's table and the table of demons too. So we have to make a decision. Are you going to drink from the cup of the Lord, or are you going to drink from the cup of demons? But you can't drink from both cups. If we're at a restaurant, you can't sit over there with your friends and over there with your family at the same time. No, no, no. You have to choose. You have to decide, are you going to go sit with them, or are you going to go sit with them? And it's the same thing here with God. Like, are you going to sit with God, or are you going to sit with Satan? Are you going to sit at the table with the Lord, or are you going to sit at the table with demons? You have to make a decision. And this specific holiday, Halloween, is a time where you really, really have to make a choice. And we all have the opportunity to choose, right? We all have to make the same decision. We all have to evaluate our lives and think about this question and make a decision according to our convictions. Who will you serve wholeheartedly? Are you going to make the sacrifices to be faithful to God? The next Bible verse we're going to look at is Joshua chapter 24, verse 15. And it says, "But if you refuse to serve the Lord, then choose today whom you will serve. Would you prefer the gods of your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates, or will it be the gods of the Amorites in whose land you now live? But as for me and my family, we will serve the Lord." And that is a decision that we all have to make as believers. At the end of the day, regardless of how we feel, we must remember that we are in a spiritual battle. While you might have good intentions and thoughts regarding celebrating Halloween, we have to remember that the devil plays for keeps, right? I mean, for people, it might be, oh, just something cute, it's all fun and games. But for Satan, it is not. It is a more serious matter for the enemy. And we don't want to put ourselves and our family in spiritual danger for the sake of one fun night. So the next Bible verse we're going to look at is Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12. And it says, "We are not fighting against flesh and blood enemies, but against evil rulers and authorities and of the unseen world, against mighty powers in this dark world, and against evil spirits in heavenly places." We see here that it is a spiritual thing. We have to step beyond the natural, step beyond the costumes and the candy and whatever else, and think about what it really is. This is a spiritual battle. All right, so those were the Bible verses that we were going to look at for this specific topic. And now we're going to cover a little bit of the origin. If you want an in-depth explanation, then check the description box below for my blog post, which is titled "Should Christians Celebrate Halloween?" because I go into much more detail in that post. But here's the general rundown. So the "een" part in Halloween refers to the evening of All Saints' Day. And we're not talking about like the saints of the Bible, right? We're not talking about raise your hand, saints, and praise. No, we're not talking about that. These are actually saints that were druids, and they were Celt priests who worshiped Satan. Those were the saints, right, that we're referring to in All Saints' Day. So Halloween itself evolved from an ancient Celtic holiday, which is called Samhain. Now it's spelled completely different, but it's pronounced Samhain. And it's actually a religious pagan festival that is usually celebrated from October 31st to November 1st. So it's a couple of days, and they celebrate it every year with a festival because for them, it marks the beginning of the season of darkness. It's a time where they usher in the dark half of the year. Historically, the Druids used to meet on a hilltop in the midst of a dark forest that they deemed a sacred forest. During those times, they would light new bonfires. They would offer sacrifices of crops and animals, and they would dance around their fires. They also made sure to extinguish the old fire and to start a new fire. And those were the fires that they used to keep their houses warm, and they believed that it would also ward off evil spirits. Samhain itself, this holiday, it is actually a time of communication with the dead. They used this time to catch up with their ancestors, to share what's happened over the years, and historically, even the children would play and communicate with the spirits. See, the Celts believed that the barriers between the spiritual and the physical realm can be breached during the time of Samhain. So, as we know, we can't see into the spiritual realm right now with our natural physical eyes. Well, they believe that that separation between the spirit and the physical is actually easily breached during the time of Samhain. And as a result, they would leave offerings outside of their fields and villages for these fairies that were known as she. They believed also that the spirits of the dead, their ancestors, would return on this day. As we've discussed, they communicate with them. And they also believe that these evil spirits were also able to have more access to the physical realm. And so they needed to leave food out for these spirits. They believed that if they didn't leave food out for them, that all types of terrible, horrible things would happen to them. So that's how they welcomed them, by leaving out food. So we talked about how they made these bonfires, but we didn't talk about the costumes. So they used to dress up like monsters and animals so that the Sidhe would not be tempted to kidnap them. Remember, the Sidhe, we said, are the fairies. So they didn't want the fairies to kidnap them, so they would dress up and disguise themselves. Their costumes were typically made of animal skins as well as the heads of their animals to protect themselves from the evil spirits. I don't know about you, but that sounds so gross, but that's what they did. They used these animals to disguise themselves so that they would be protected from evil spirits. That is one of the origins of the Halloween costume. Halloween itself is believed to be the night where Satan and his witches and warlocks have the most power. In case you are not aware, witches are absolutely a real thing. So now we need to address the elephant in the room. We need to answer the controversial question based on the origin of Halloween and based on the scripture that we looked at. Should Christians celebrate Halloween? I'd like to first answer that question with the question, and I mentioned this earlier before. And the question is, does Halloween glorify God? Let me know in the chat down below. Do you believe that Halloween brings God glory within itself? I want to take a look at 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 31, which says, "So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God." So if you're like me and you believe that Halloween does not glorify God because it glorifies Satan, the answer is no. Christians do not celebrate Halloween. However, just because you choose not to emulate the world, you choose not to conform to the world, does not mean that you can't have fun. I want to emphasize that choosing not to celebrate Halloween does not mean that you are doomed to a life of boredom while everyone else is having fun. That is not the case. And if you have children, please do your due diligence to help them to understand this as well. Christians can have fun. So here's some ideas for a fun time without the compromise. First thing is a harvest festival. This one is really popular amongst churches where they usually will do some sort of carnival style games and play for candy. Now listen, if the whole thing is about candy, honey, just go buy some candy for your kids. Most kids really like Halloween, one, for the candy, and two, probably also to dress up. But the candy is important to them. If it's about candy, just buy your kids some candy. Just buy a few bags. Go to Walgreens, buy a few bags of candy, and boom, make them happy. But usually a Harvest Fest do offer candy during these festivals. And sometimes they'll even allow children to dress up like Bible characters or whatever, just so that the kids still feel like they're taking part in something. Another thing to consider as a Halloween alternative for Christians is evangelism or some sort of outreach. Now, this can be anything, really. It can be putting tracts, passing out tracts while you're passing out candy. You put the tract and the candy in the bag. It could also be, hosting an event, an evangelistic event, or some sort of play where the gospel is being shared. It can also just be simply walking around and sharing the gospel with the people that you come in contact with. The third alternative for Halloween for Christians is a trunk or treat event, which is usually something that churches will also do if they're not doing a Harvest Fest. And with the trunk or treat, this is also a fun event where people park their car. Sometimes they'll decorate the car or they'll decorate the trunk, and they'll pass out candy from their trunk, and the kids can go from car to car to get candy. Again, it's about the candy. Go to Walgreens and get you some candy. Another alternative, number 4, is a family fun night. And it's something that you can do just in the privacy of your own home with your family. And there's so many different things that you can do with this. You can do a movie night, a craft night, a game night, and play for candy. You can do a potluck and invite friends and family over. You could even go out in the backyard at night and talk about how Jesus is the light in the darkness. And then you can go play hide and seek with flashlights. You can be very creative with this, especially if you have kids. You want to make sure that you are allowing them to feel like they are having fun, even though they're not out there doing what the world is doing. Other things that you can do are, talk about fall or read books about fall. I'm going to go ahead and put a link in the description box for the Pumpkin Patch Parable, which is usually a popular read around this time of year. And the 5th thing is a light party. And you can check my blog post. It's down in the description box down below for more details and the link to where you can access more information regarding that. So we covered a lot of information in this video, and hopefully you found it helpful. Please share it. I think that it's something that needs to be addressed. It's something that needs to be talked about. We as Christians need to stop going with the flow and sweeping things under the rug and just look at the situation for what it is. Does Halloween glorify God? Hey, listen, if you have any other Halloween alternatives, go ahead and drop them down below. Give everyone some other ideas for those who are looking for alternatives, who don't want to go out trick-or-treating, who don't want to do it the world's way. If you have any other ideas for Halloween alternatives, drop them down in the comments below. If you found this video helpful and valuable, please give it a thumbs up, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye.